Bonjour à tous. C'est un test des micros de la salle W.
So we will start in 2 more minutes in order to wait for if other panels have been trespassing the hour.
Yes.
Okay, so may I suggest that we start first by welcoming you all. If some of you who are in the back of the room don't have a problem getting nearer to us, that would be great and good for group dynamics, but it is not an instruction. It is just a suggestion. So before I introduce our panel, let me start with 1 or 2 words on the topic. So we know that Amazon deforestation is a major environmental issue for us all, given the importance of this ecosystem for both climate and biodiversity. And I'm not going to insist on why it matters and how big is the problem. We all have the numbers or can find them very easily on internet. We also know, I think, that the main driver of this problem is agricultural expansion for heavily traded commodities, cattle, coffee, cocoa, sugarcane, soya, timber, and the rest, which for a large part of them are exported. Hence the trade impact and trade problem. We know that this tension between the environmental value of the Amazonian ecosystem and this trade problem has triggered measures by some in the name of making trade more sustainable, in the name of greening trade. Of course, the EU deforestation regulation, and I'm sure we will be talking about that. Of course, what the UK is now doing. Of course, what is brewing in Congress. So there is a problem of trade defense, which then creates a defense against trade defense, which is the debate the EU has triggered with its EU deforestation regulation. So that, I think, properly defines the problem we are talking about and to which we are here, not just to talk about the problem, which is an interesting preamble, but to try and find solution. Is there a way to reconcile environment protection and trade openness? In other terms, is there a way to exploit major ecosystems like the Amazon in a sustainable way, and what can trade do to help this happening? That's, I think, the core of the issue. So we have with us, of course, Annabelle Gonzalez, which I don't need to introduce in this house. Sorry, I haven't introduced myself. My name is Pascal Lamy, and I've had a few acquaintances with this organization for quite a bit of time. That was in the Middle Ages. So we have Annabelle, who will be the first to tell us her views about this. We have on my right Renata Amaral, who's a young, very young Secretariat of International Affairs and Development at the Planning and Budget Ministry in Brazil. We have Clark Lundberg, who's an expert, a professor of economy at San Diego University. And we have Fernanda Stefani, who is both an entrepreneur and an activist. And she has set up a company which is an activist company, which I think will also help us sort of looking at how to ground this conversation in case we would remain too much in the abstract. So that's the idea. So we will first hear from Annabelle, and then I will ask the other panelists to react, and we will move it there from here, here from there. I can introduce a few questions in the discussion, but of course, I'm more here to try and make you react and raise questions. If it's questions, I will be thankful so that they are short. And if it's about observations, I will be thankful that they are very short. Thanks a lot in advance. Annabelle, you have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Pascal. And let me say that it's a pleasure for me to be here with all of you in the panel and with all of you in the audience to discuss pathways for inclusive and sustainable development in Amazonia through forest preservation, finance, and trade. Through our flagship initiative, Amazonia Forever, the Inter-American Development Bank has renewed its commitment to the Amazonian region and its people by integrating climate, nature, bioeconomy, and trade. Leveraging its own financial, technical, and knowledge resources, the bank is successfully mobilizing public and private sectors, academia, civil society, governments of Amazonian countries, donors, and other stakeholders in these shared goals. So to help set the context for our discussion, I thought that I shared a video with you, particularly for those of you who have not been in the Amazon. It's a very impressive place, as you will see from our video. Do I need to do something? It's coming? Okay.
coming.
As the world's largest tropical forest, the Amazon spans 8 countries, covers 40% of Latin America and the Caribbean, and has the planet's largest diversity of indigenous peoples and biodiversity. Known as the lungs of the world, the Amazon region is vital to combating climate change, but it
Can we
faces
turn up the
threats from
volume?
deforestation and unsustainable
Yeah,
practices.
right here.
Protecting the Amazon and its people requires a holistic approach that combines climate, nature, and economic opportunities. The bioeconomy could help transform the Amazon, harnessing its natural resources to sustainably produce goods and services that benefit both local communities and global markets. Sustainably developing the Amazon also requires trade and regional integration to improve supply chains, encourage environmentally friendly practices, and create economic opportunities for Amazon residents. To unlock the Amazon's potential, the IDB launched Amazonia Forever, a flagship program to address issues ranging from the bioeconomy and deforestation to education, healthcare, sustainable cities, and low-carbon agriculture. Amazonia Forever promotes collaboration between Amazon countries, the public and private sectors, donors, indigenous organizations, civil society, and multilateral institutions to scale up financing and increase the impact of our work to drive development. In just over a year, Amazonia Forever has dramatically expanded its project portfolio and donor base with new partners from across the globe. And we aim to further scale up financing and develop even more innovative solutions to further maximize impact. The Amazon's future, and that of our planet, depends on the collective actions we take today. Together, we have a historic opportunity to secure a thriving Amazonia for generations to come.
All right, so let me center my remarks on 3 points. The first is on the climate-nature nexus. So we know that the Amazon rainforest is an irreplaceable ecosystem that spans 8 Latin American countries: Bolivia, Brazil, Colombia, Ecuador, Guyana, Peru, Suriname, and Venezuela, serving as the lifeblood of the region. It provides over 40% of Latin America's fresh water, and nearly 70% of South America's GDP is generated in areas that receive water from the Amazon. This vast rainforest is not just a regional asset, it is a global public good that transcends borders. The Amazon is crucial in our fight against climate change and biodiversity. Producing 20% of the world's oxygen and storing around 100 billion metric tons of carbon, the Amazon is indispensable in regulating the global climate and in slowing global warming. Additionally, with approximately 390 billion trees and 16,000 species, it stands as one of the most diverse regions on Earth. Yet, Pascal was mentioned very clearly, the preservation of the Amazon is under threat. Unsustainable agricultural practices and land use changes are driving deforestation at alarming rates. This destruction disrupts water cycles, leads to extreme climate events, and causes extreme biodiversity loss. Meanwhile, millions of people in the Amazon continue to live in poverty, lacking access to basic services and economic opportunities. So a concerted international effort is essential to connect climate, nature, and the economy to protect this vital public good while improving the livelihoods of Amazonian communities. My second point is on bioeconomy and sustainable agriculture as a paradigm shift. So nature is a central asset in Latin America and the Caribbean, where 12% of GDP and 20% of jobs rely on ecosystem services. Many of these jobs are held by vulnerable communities. So to secure a sustainable future, the region must transition to an economic model that harnesses biological resources and processes to meet human needs while protecting the environment. In this context, the bioeconomy, a model that uses biological resources to produce sustainable goods, services, and energy, can be transformative. By shifting the use of forest resources towards value-added, such as food, bio-based products, bioenergy, and biotechnology, the bioeconomy offers a pathway to just and sustainable economic transformation. And I think we will hear from Fernanda a lot on this point. So this transformation is crucial for over 40 million people living in Amazonia, particularly indigenous and Afro-descendant communities who depend on these resources for their livelihoods. Now, trade, and this is why you may ask, well, what am I talking about all of this, and what role does trade play here? So trade is central to realizing the full potential of the bioeconomy and driving sustainable growth. In the Amazon, where extractive models have often led to environmental degradation, trade can open new markets, enhance participation in supply chains, foster innovation and technology transfer, and support regulatory frameworks that encourage sustainable practices. As global trade in bioeconomy products continue to grow, strengthening Amazonian value chains and promoting circular economies will be essential. And here, the IDB is working with local and manufacturing sectors to promote this inclusive value chains. And I'm going to give you an example. We've been working with NGOs like Rainforest Alliance, Nature Conservancy, and others in financing an Amazon bioeconomy marketplace to strengthen emerging biobusinesses and connect them with investors and markets. In addition to the bioeconomy, sustainable livestock and low-carbon agriculture are critical for the Amazon future. Historically, these sectors, we know, have been significant contributors to deforestation. However, they also hold the potential for important change. Here again, at the IDB, we've been working with the World Wide Fund, Nature Conservancy, and others in leading initiatives such as cattle traceability in Pará, Brazil. These efforts aim to transform the sector, reduce deforestation, and create new opportunities for the private sector. However, one of the key challenges to using trade as a tool for preservation and poverty reduction is the complexity and diversity of environmental and social standards required in international markets. We know that the EU's upcoming deforestation regulation that will come into effect later this year requires detailed and often complex data from suppliers, many of whom are small and medium-sized enterprises in regions like the Amazonia. So compliance of this, with these standards is required to access markets, but it also requires international cooperation, technical assistance, and capacity building for the private sector. The IDB is already working closely with countries in the region to help them navigate these challenges and seize opportunities. For instance, we are partnering with the International Cocoa Organization to strengthen capabilities of cocoa producers in Colombia through the implementation of a traceability system to enable them to access markets under new regulations, such as the EU deforestation-free products and also the UK forest risk commodity legislation. Another interesting example is in my home country, Costa Rica, where the country effectively monitors its coffee producers across the entire supply chain, becoming a leader in commodity traceability, despite 90% of its coffee farmers being smallholders. Now, the third and last point that I want to make is about Amazonia Forever. I want to share a little bit with you about this program that we have at the IDB and the results that we've achieved so far. So Amazonia Forever is the IDB's flagship program designed to promote inclusive and sustainable development across the Amazon region. This holistic initiative acts as a coordination platform, bringing together a wide range of partners to scale up investments and increase the impact of our collective work. The program integrates several initiatives, funds, and projects aimed at boosting financial resources and enhancing knowledge exchange across sectors and territories. Additionally, Amazonia Forever fosters regional cooperation among the 8 Amazonian countries, as well as collaboration between governments, donors, the private sector, NGOs, and civil society. Now, over the past year, Amazonia Forever has achieved significant results. Its project portfolio has grown from $1 billion to nearly $3.8 billion, encompassing 191 projects across the 8 Amazonian countries. It has also expanded its donor base from 5 to 9 countries. These investments are aligned with the program's 5 pillars of action. 1, combating deforestation, 2, promoting the bioeconomy, 3, improving livelihoods, 4, developing sustainable infrastructure and cities, and 5, fostering sustainable low carbon agriculture. So let me share a couple of the things that we've achieved so far. 1, under the bioeconomy pillar, we've secured $390 million in loans and concessional resources in collaboration with the Green Climate Fund. We're also exploring innovative financial instruments to support conservation efforts. For example, in Ecuador, we are working on a new debt for nature swap to use the funding for Amazonian conservation. And 3, we're also supporting the private sector as one of the key components of Amazonia Forever. So in closing, I would like us all to recognize that the Amazon for what it truly is. That is the world's most vital climate regulator and cornerstone in our fight against climate change and poverty. So its preservation is not only an environmental imperative, it's also an economic one. Trade and the bioeconomy offer powerful pathways to prosperity, but to unlock their full potential, we must scale up financing and develop innovative solutions that generate real impact. And achieving this vision requires coherent policies and innovative financing from both public and private sector. Every dollar invested in ecosystem restoration yields $30 in economic benefits. This is the essence of the climate-nature relationship we must champion. And with COP16 in Cali, Colombia, and COP30 in Belém, Brazil on the horizon, we have a historic opportunity to place Amazonia at the forefront of the global agenda. Thank you, Pascal.
Thanks, Annabelle. So we've heard that the IADB and Annalise Gonzalez, as a VP of the IADB, has a recipe. They have a recipe to make climate, the economy, nature, and the social work together. That's very good news. Well, lots of us have been looking for that for a long time. So, great idea. You have a plan. The IADB has a few resources. So the first question for the members of the panel to react, I think, is can this connection work? And under which conditions? Or is Annabelle putting in her shop window something which looks attractive but might be a dream? You will start first, okay. Renata. I think as a sort of national, as we say in France during the Tour de France, la régionale de l'étape. I think you have to react first, and then I will give the floor to Clark, and then to Fernanda, who's another régionale de l'étape.
Oh, excellent. Thank you very much, Pascal. We are just talking, as he called me young. First time I saw him in person was 20 years ago. I was not at school.
I cannot believe you were not at school.
No, but I'll tell you, my dermatologist she's doing a great job. So, but I'm very excited to be part of this panel. I just met Fernanda and Clark, but Annabelle and Pascal are two people I admire a lot over the years, since my college years. And it's a pleasure to be here with you all. First, Pascal, I would like just to make some introductory remarks, and then I'll go to the specific point of the challenges and the opportunities, especially that the Amazon Forever program provides for countries like Brazil. Brazil is chairing the platform of countries this year since 2023. So we have been involved since the early stage of the platform and of the program. But I would like to mention before focusing on that specific points is that I think that bringing and highlighting the topic of Amazonia and sustainability in this public forum and bringing to this forum demonstrates that the WTO remains absolutely tuned to the most relevant global discussions. It also recognizes, in my opinion, the importance of the trade dimension in promoting sustainable development, as Annabelle just mentioned and highlighted as well. It is becoming increasingly clear that the common mission of ensuring sustainable development of the Amazon holds strategic relevance beyond our region, beyond the 8 countries that are part and form the Amazon. The preservation of this biome is essential for the balance of the entire planet, not only the region. So it is always worth emphasizing that the Amazon is a fundamental pillar of our global climate system, a treasury of biodiversity, and a source of sustainable economic growth. Under President Lula's leadership, Brazil, and we have been advocating for global prosperity, that global prosperity depends on eradicating poverty and promoting social inclusion. And to achieve this, it is necessary to promote sustainable development in the 3 dimensions, also mentioned by Annabelle, the economic, social, and environmental dimension. This year, Brazil has placed this discussion at the center of G20, of the G20 agenda. We have the presidency of G20 this year under the theme Building a Just World and a Sustainable Planet. Additionally, we have incorporated this topic into the most strategic level of our 4-year National Development Plan, which is built by the Minister of Planning and Budget. It's called the Multi-Year Plan 2024-2027. Sustainable development has been chosen as a strategic and the most strategic dimension of our multi-year plan, while environment is one of our 5 cross-cutting agendas. So it has to be addressed in every public policy that we build in Brazil. So on the specific topic, Pascal, I think we cannot speak about sustainable development and global value chains, for example, without speaking about financing. And that's one topic that also Annabelle mentioned. So integrating sustainability into value chains is a necessity, if not only for environmental reasons, but also for economic incentives. So, however, the path of sustainability imposes several challenges. And we have here the Minister of Development and Trade here also present. We have been working together a lot on this issue. But especially in developing countries, and particularly in the Amazon regions, we have several challenges to overcome. Especially in the Amazon region, financing is key to allow local communities and even larger producers to develop their economic activities in a more sustainable, environmentally respectful manner without resorting to illegal activities, of course. The investment needs of the Amazon are immense, particularly considering the population of over 29 million people only in Brazil, spread across 9 states in Brazil and more than 800 municipalities. The region currently houses 426 indigenous territories with 180 different people. It spans over 5 million square kilometers, 80% of which will still consists in native vegetation. So at the Ministry of Planning and Budget, we have been working intensively to promote the financing of sustainable development policies and programs through multilateral development banks like the IDB. To give you an example of what we are doing internally, at the External Financing Commission, which I'm the president of, where we approve federal sovereign guarantees for external financing operations, we have recently established this year a specific sublimit of sovereign guarantee for projects from states and municipalities in Brazil with environmental and climate content. Just in 2024, this limit is set at $500 million, and we are working to increase this amount for 2025. So Brazil has been working in national and international levels to ensure funding for the Amazon region. Besides the initiatives with multilateral development banks, like the IDB, we also count on traditional multilateral and national funding mechanisms, like the reduction emissions from deforestation and forest degradation in developing countries, Paris Agreement, part of the Paris Agreement, and the UN Multi-Partner Trust Fund for the Amazon. At the same time, we are working on a proposal for innovative funding mechanisms, the Tropical Forest Forever Facility in the context of COP. It is going to be a performance-based financial instruments with payments based on hectares of standing and restored forests. Brazil hopes to have a consensus proposal by next COP, COP29, and the fully operational mechanism for COP30, which is going to happen in Brazil, in Belém, in the middle of the Amazon next year, November 2025. So in this context, I want just to highlight to end the importance of the Amazon Forever program for Brazil and for the countries which are part of the platform and of the program. This umbrella program, established exactly 1 year ago, is associated with a platform of ministers of planning and finance from the countries of the region, who aim to deepen their dialogue and cooperation among the countries to provide solutions for sustainable development in the region, in the Amazon. Through the program, we aim not only to increase the availability of resources, but also to bring a holistic and coordinated approach to the region's development projects, which Annabelle made a reference to. With the support of the IDB, of the bank, we have been working on expanding technical and financial resources for impactful projects. We do this through both donations from supporting countries, and the development of innovative financial instruments for raising, leveraging, and mitigating risks, and also including the private sector. For the year of 2024 alone, across the entire region, and Annabelle made a brief reference to this, there are already over 100 projects underway under the Amazon Forever program, including both credit operations and technical cooperation activities, totaling more than $1 billion. In Brazil, just in Brazil, there are currently 26 operations in progress, totaling over $600 million. These include projects of extreme local importance, such as the establishment of a payment system for environmental services in Pará, where COP is going to happen next year, the Amazon Bioeconomy Program, and the micro, small, and medium enterprises program in the Amazon region, as well as health and decarbonization projects, for example, also being part of the umbrella of projects that are happening just in Brazil. So just to finalize, other initiatives under the program include also launching next month of the Amazon Bonds Investment Guidelines with the support of the IDB, and Brazil is also at the front of this initiative, and the establishment of a platform to improve the capacity of local communities to design and implement projects in the region. I think I'll stop here. Thank you.
Thanks, Renata. So your answer is yes, it can work, provided it's oiled with finance, IADB being one of them. Okay, good. I think it's a pretty clear signal. Clark, on your side, as an economist specialized in these issues, are these the right conditions to make this sort of magic circle work?
I think the very high level short answer is yes, it is possible, but it is a bit of a needle to thread, especially with respect to trade. I think it might be pithy to describe trade as both a peril and a promise for these objectives. The peril, you've already mentioned, Pascal, being the threat of agricultural extensification in the Amazon. Especially in the Brazilian Amazon, the threat of cattle expansion and soy expansion that are driven by export markets is a tremendous challenge to overcome. So that's, I think, the backdrop against which we need to talk about trade as a potential tool to support these objectives, to support the Amazonia Forever program. And I kind of view three very large macro scale policy areas, I think, that where there's a lot of potential to leverage. The first is the impacts that structural transformation can have in reducing some of these agricultural pressures. So it's well known that improvements in market access and improvements to foreign markets lead to local economic growth that can lead to structural transformation. So a sort of recomposition of economic activity in rural economies. That's something that naturally happens. And I think one potential sort of domain that's amenable to policy solutions is to simply encourage it. So there are a number of different policy solutions that are fairly easy to implement that could encourage and kind of catalyze this structural transformation, which might reorient some of the pressures away from fragile ecosystems. The other sort of large macro scale, I guess, potential solution here is the role that trade can play in connecting foreign consumers that might have sort of preferences for environmental characteristics in their goods, connecting those consumers to producers in rural Amazon regions. So this is, we've seen that the market effectively values certain certification schemes like organic certification. In many cases, the sort of consumer price paid for organic certification is quite large relative to non-organic options. And there is a whole host of potential certification schemes being implemented in the region, FSC as one major one. But I think we need to think a little bit carefully about leaning too heavily into this for two reasons. The first is, unlike organic certification schemes that we've seen sort of consumers value, a lot of the conservation or environmental related certification schemes hinge on consumer altruism. So there's not this sort of direct benefit. I'm not avoiding potential pesticides or other types of production methods in food that I'm ingesting. Instead, I'm saying I'm willing to pay extra for a product that is deforestation free or something like that. So those kind of certification premia kind of hinge on this altruism. And it's not clear that for a lot of these different sort of sustainable production methods that the certification will generate enough of a market premium whereby we can induce smallholder producers to adopt these practices. The other question is related to premia. Let's set that aside for the moment and just say that there is a market premium generated by these types of certifications. That premium is distributed across the value chain, and it's not clear where the bulk of that is going to be captured. So we've got some evidence that fair trade coffee premia that's generated does not actually accrue to coffee producers. It primarily accrues to coffee roasters far down the value chain, and in fact, in many cases, outside of countries of origin. And so that's another kind of question is if we lean heavily on this policy solution, where exactly does how can we get the premia and these additional sort of prices to farmers rather than intermediaries? So kind of policy solution, regardless, all of these tools, this certification framework hinges on market demand. That is how these types of premia emerge, is consumers are willing to pay. And so one potential policy intervention is not on the producer side, but rather in international markets, campaigns to increase awareness and or in some sense market the value of these certification sort of schemes or environmental characteristics. The third point I'd like to highlight is it's a bit wonky, but it is the role that trade policy is increasingly playing as an environmental policy tool. And by trade policy, I'm referring less to actually trade itself, but truly trade policy. So we've seen an explosion in trade agreements that include particular sort of commitments to deforestation, free production, other types of environmental protections embedded in a trade agreement. The EU is kind of leading out in unilateral policy solutions here. The sort of precursor to the EUDR is a program called FLEGT, which was focused on timber trade. And so there's some evidence that these types of trade policy tools can be effective at achieving environmental objectives, but the context matters. And I think the way that I think about this is both of the, like any type of policy like this is conditioning market access on environmental performance. And the question we need to think about with respect to the effectiveness of these policies is whether or not we're conditioning preferential market access or just conditioning market access at all. And so there's a stark contrast between these kind of bilateral trade agreement environmental commitments that we found to be quite effective at limiting deforestation in particular. It's a contrast between those where the market access conditionality is preferential. So because this is tied to tariff reductions, the market is relatively more attractive. And so you may be more inclined to actually commit to environmental protections versus the EU unilateral framework in which the EU is effectively saying goods can't enter the European market unless certain conditions are met. And the sort of, I guess, the bad news from that type of policy is that the EU is not the only market in the world. This is a policy that's taking place in a global trade network. And so we need to think carefully about what that means. And there's pretty clear evidence that the EU's FLEG program has actually just simply led to diversion of trade rather than actual conforming with the certification process. And so that's a sort of limitation to this type of policy approach. And so I think the kind of bottom line takeaway here is preferential access is an important mechanism in these types of policies, but there's also opportunities for multilateralism to kind of shore up these this policy leakage. So there may be a role for, say, institutions like the WTO to play in this, and that's generally kind of outside the purview of the WTO. But there's evidence that there may be an appetite for WTO approaches to natural resource management, given recent developments with fisheries. So, so I guess that's, again, to highlight my sort of punchline, there's peril and there's promise in trade as a way of addressing these objectives. But I think it can work.
Thanks a lot. Great contribution to making this discussion operational. And I, of course, will come back to you at some stage, as I will do with the others. But that's for the end of the discussion on what should the WTO do. It's fine, Clark saying maybe the WTO should step in. We'll need to hear a bit more about what this would mean. Fernanda, you have a very concrete experience of how and if and under which conditions this virtuous circle can work.
Well, I am the real stakeholder here. I've been living in the Amazon for over 18 years. So I moved to the Amazon in 2006. And I'm also an economist. So I remember during my graduation time, I wanted to save the world. And economists, they can do three things. They do econometrics. That was not my thing. Or they like to study history of pensamento econômico, about history of economy, or they go to economic development. So I wanted to travel. I said, well, traveling, I can do one thing. I can be a tourist, or I can be a tourist guide, or I can do trade. So I became a trader, and I became a trader of commodities. And I did very well, actually. I was able to close vessels of steel from CSN. I sold a lot of meat to Africa. And one day I decided, and actually one day I found out that I can use the trade as a tool for forest conservation. And that really has changed my life, because trade can, in fact, be a tool for forest conservation, but not every trade. We have to understand that when you are doing a transaction, you need to know where the product is coming from and where is it going to. So money to me means basically energy that I give if I buy from a company or a co-op. The money I give them because I'm buying something is my energy. And the same thing happens when I sell. So if I sell to someone who understands the whole traceability that it has, people not only do feel better about this trade, but it enriches everybody. So everybody gets wealthy on that. So that's why I actually founded 100% Amazonia, because I could not see during my time, I'm actually do what we call trade intelligence. So I was able to apply trade intelligence to the products of the forest. This is we have assorted about 63 different products coming from the Amazon. Some of them more known, like cacao, a commodity, Brazil nuts, but some less known, but now very much known, like acai, which is a new one. But only acai has today an industry of about $3 billion. And 90% is coming from the forests. 90% of acai that's picked in different places all around the Amazon, especially in Pará, but now you have acai even in Bahia. It's a huge market and it is growing. We have to also protect the Amazon from becoming a big açaizal. That's the truth. Yeah, we have to see. So when we go back to the forest and we see the people there, we learn, especially from the people that live in the forest. We have many Amazons. We don't have only one. We have Amazon from the traditional communities, people who live there for more than 15 years. We have the traditional Amazon from the indigenous areas. It's a completely different way of doing business. If there's any business to be made, sometimes they just want to exchange things, but not necessarily products. We have also the Amazon of the agribusiness, which is very big and it's becoming bigger. And we have, of course, the Amazon that is tourism, like Costa Rica does it wonderfully. And we have to understand, at least in my opinion, that Amazon should be seen from a trade point of view as something very unique. We have problems in the Amazon, for instance, when we export, and our company exports already to 70 countries. So even Madagascar has already received some andiroba oil. And that exports from Brazil is different than exports from the Amazon. So we have this problem with Brazil nut that goes from Pará, from Acre, over the border to Bolivia, enters Korea with 0% import taxes, while if it goes from Brazil directly, is 18%. It's the same Brazil nut, guys. Same thing. So that happens to acai as well, to Europe. So I think if we would be able to create like a supranational version of a region that from the trade point of view, not sovereignty, this is what I'm saying. But if we could treat Amazon as a unique place that requires specific set of regulations, that would help a lot. But we also need companies to do what we do. It's not simply opening a new supply chain, but companies that go to Amazon, they need to have a social point of view. It's not simply opening a company. It needs to be a social company. It needs to be social entrepreneurs, because the region, although it's one of the most biodiverse places and one of the wealthiest places I've ever been, we don't know how to use it properly. And so we also have one of the lowest incomes and also education in Brazil. It's the poor, but this is a paradox to me. It's the wealthiest, yet the poorest. And this needs to be changed, of course. I think I am very happy because the last 2 years we have seen a very, very big difference in terms of how the government, especially the presidency, the federal government is looking at the Amazon, I would say it has finally waken up. Yeah, because we have always been there, but no one really saw us. We were just like a green carpet that when you fly from Sao Paulo to Miami, was that big green carpet, but we had 30 million people living under that carpet. And it's just the size of 123 Switzerlands. So I made the calculation yesterday. So it's not something that's very small, and we have different parts too. So I think I would really invite you to go to COP, but I think at least one in your lifetime, you should go to the Amazon, because it's something that we cannot really explain. How is it to feel there? How, when you fly Belém, the immense amount of water that surrounds the Amazon is impressive. Yet, we had to move the port of Manaus to Itacoatiara last month because the Amazon is actually suffering one of the severest drought ever. And we're having a big problem in exporting our goods because the vessels are not able to dock. So it's a paradox. And I'm very happy to be here, and I'm very happy to be discussing this at WTO, because this is also, like Renata said, my college time, same thing. You know, this is like, for me, this is here like Rome to a Catholic person. This is where the Pope stays, the Vatican, yeah? This is not my house to the sense, but this is where I always aim for, to come and discuss this issue here is for me huge. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. So I can confirm that the Amazon spending one night down there is a formidable experience. So what you've told us is in line with what we've heard so far. Making trade work for forest conservation can work under a number of conditions. And I think that's, for the moment, where we are in this discussion. Of course, none of you said it can work anytime, anyhow. There has to be conditions, which I think is taking us to the crux of the matter. We have 20 minutes left. We've heard, by the way, a number of these conditions. Time now for the audience to speak, either for questions, preferably, or for observations, if they are short. So let me get a sense of the demand so that then we can proportionate the supply. What is the demand for speaking? I can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. So that's 7. Okay. And maybe we'll be at 10 in a few minutes. That's my experience. But I just want to sort of adjust the clock with you. So we will take these questions in a row, and then try and the panelists will themselves try to answer it, and I might add 1 or 2, but being responsible for the clock, I will also refrain myself. So please go on. We will take them row by row. So those in this row, and then that's easier given the geography of the room.
Thank you very much. My name is Ana Beatriz Balcázar Moreno. A disclaimer, I'm also from Colombia, but my question is not only related to my country is globally, but also regarding the holistic perspective that we are mentioning already, and also the awareness and the solutions, or maybe the promises of the solutions. And for me, not only states matter, but also institution matters. So I'm talking about dialogues, not only across the 8 countries of the region, but also the interinstitutional dialogues. And of course, my idea is not to institution WTO working alone, like in a silo, and then the others working alone. No, the idea is to have a cross-sectoral work. And of course, you are mentioning also economic, social. So I'm going to say economic trade and social health. And with this, I'm connecting with the One Health approach that WHO is talking about, but also not only WHO, but also FAO, and also UNEP, and also the Organization on Animal Health. This is one part of the institutional dialogue. In the other sector, we have the Inter-American Court of Human Rights that Colombia with Chile, they raised the question of advisory opinion, what to do, what is the obligation of states individually, but also collectively regarding climate. But this is not only the one advisory opinion, we have also ITCLOS that is maritime, but also water sources is also related to being sustainable. But also now we have the ICJ, International Court of Justice. So my question to you is, of course, you are working with the bank, but also I'm questioning, maybe you can also work with these other organizations that in a way, they are also related to trade, but let's say in an indirect relation with trade. Thank you.
Good. Other questions on this side of the room? No? Be careful because we are moving to another one. Okay, let's move to this part. Yes, go ahead.
Vera Torstensen from Brazil and also an academic. First of all, congratulations for the initiative. Annabelle is fantastic, but I am Brazilian, but for the first time I listen what's going on there. And congratulations, Renata, and also to. For Clark, sorry, I think you have to come more times to this house. And sorry for your room, because this room is like the barbars are arriving and dismantling it. There is no WTO anymore. Pascal, we really miss you. The point is it's blocked completely. And, you know, you heard yesterday, we have India here, you have to see, and Pascal is amazing, how the lawyers could not expel a country that is blocking an organization for so many years. I don't know what the lawyers are doing here, to tell you. Fernanda, for you, I think it's a marvelous work you are doing. And I love your idea of trying to imagine a kind of common zone for exports and so on. Sorry for your castanhas, because it's a different way, like as Korea saw from Brazil and from Colombia. It's completely, but this is the thing you can work. And I'm really worried about the draw, because IDB must have to rethink the program, because this draw is coming, and it's not going to end, because this is the new generation. So can you imagine the Amazon without water? So that's it. Think about it. Thanks.
I have another question there, and then.
No. It's fine. Okay. Okay. Great. So my name is Eloisa Pereira. I'm Undersecretary for Trade Policy in the Brazilian Foreign Trade Chamber in the Ministry of Trade and Development in Brazil. And I'd like to congratulate you all for this fantastic panel, Annabelle, Pascal, Renata, Clark, and Fernanda. And my question is for Clark. So thinking about what Fernanda wonderfully said, and I think everyone can learn from business, right? So she said that we should think about the uniqueness of the Amazon. So my question is how the academics in general, and you in particular, can bring the uniqueness characteristics of the Amazon forest to the academic debate. Because you started your point bringing the same standard narrative that you always listen. You mentioned that we have this threat of agricultural intensification in the Amazon forest, especially in Brazil. And then we need to look at the soy expansion and cattle expansion. This is the standard narrative. how can you bring some nuance to your narrative? If you think of what Fernanda said, the Amazon is unique. If you think about the UDR, there are some many requirements there that do not consider the unique characteristics of indigenous population that Renata mentioned, that do not consider all the characteristics of the production, the sustainability of production. Much of the production in the Amazon forest today is without expansion of land, but we still have expansion of production. So how to bring these characteristics that we have in the Amazon forest and the Amazon production? And the problem of deforestation is not only about agriculture expansion. This is the given narrative. And then what you bring in your talk today is just like, is the standard narrative. How can you bring some nuance to it? And the other point is that you also mentioned, you just repeat what is said. And what is said is that deforestation after a cutoff date is bad. So this is a premise. We start with this premise. Deforestation after December 2020 is bad, and whatever happened before is okay, is good. And no matter what you do, for example, in the Amazon forest, something that you didn't bring in your talk is that if a producer, and in Fernando is a trader, but if you're a producer and then you buy 1,000 hectares to produce, you need to preserve 900 hectares. That's like, it's 8% for preservation, 10% for another type of protection, and you can produce in 10% of your area. In Europe, in the EU, it's the opposite. If you buy 100 hectares, you need to protect only 4% of forest preservation. So how can you bring this type of nuances into this narrative that academics are putting out there? Thank you.
Yeah, question. We still have a few, so please try to be short. I'll give you the floor, and then I'll move to the other side.
Hi, wonderful talk. Thank you very much. I'm Belen Gracia, a PhD candidate at Maastricht University, but I'm originally from Argentina, so this is a matter very close to my heart. I found what you said, Fernando, fascinating. It's very good to hear that trade can be used as a tool actually for forest conservation. And I was wondering if you can give us, you said you work in the region, you lived in the region, perhaps some examples that you have seen from working in the region, how to create the bridge between trade and climate issues, because I'm studying issues related to international trade and the circular economy, and I've learned that there are many practices from the populations living in the Amazon actually related to circularity that we can use as an example to move forward. So perhaps you can mention some of them. So, thank you.
I have one more here. There's a big concentration there. Not my work. And then I have 2-3 questions on that side. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much. I'll be brief because my question, I guess, is development or continuation of the other ones. So I'm Geraldo Vidigal from the University of Amsterdam, but I also happen to be Brazilian. So I guess the question is, I mean, that's what Renata started with, right? Talking about there are 30 million people in the Amazon. So these people have to live off something. So you can't, a lot of what we see coming from, I guess, especially from the EU now is to curtail opportunities for economic development that you think are harmful. But the question is, what do these 30 million do that will give them, allow them to make a living while staying there? Thank you. Or, moving if they want to, but, there will be 30 million people there.
Okay, so we have, yes, Caroline in the back, and then the lady in the back there, and I think I have one. Yeah.
Thank you. I'm Caroline with Climate Action Platform Africa, CAPE. My question's for Clark. You spoke about the premiums that are needed to pay for sustainably developed products. What's your assessment in terms of the quantum that the market is willing to absorb related to what is needed?
Simple question. You just have to give a number in answering. Yeah, go ahead.
Hello, my name is Claire Cito. I'm here in my capacity as Senior Fellow for the Canadian Agri-Food Policy Alliance. My two questions, one is for Clark, both on data. You mentioned that certification schemes depend on consumer demand. Do we have data on how much consumer demand impacts sustainability outcomes and practices? And the second question, still on data and perhaps for Renata, you spoke a bit about that tropical funding, which is based on land outstanding and restored forest. Do we know how much, do we have data on what investments deliver what sustainability outcomes, looking at the three pillars of sustainability?
Last question? Before last question.
Hi, I have a very different kind of question. And first of all, congratulations to all. I am Valeria Piñeiro. I'm from IFPRI, International Food Policy Research Institute in Washington, D.C. And the question goes, we've been studying a lot of the food system. So this is the perfect case for something that it goes more than just agriculture, more than just health, more than just a little piece. And it takes you through the whole value chain as well. So I've been thinking a lot about the institutional arrangements that we need to have these days in order to accommodate this discussion about food system. Here at the WTO, for example, it is only agriculture, so it's a Committee of Agriculture and so forth. So there's a big disparity or a big difference between what we see right now and the institutions and governance that has to go with that. So I thought that have your inputs about this platform that you're having in terms of the ministries is only planification. So it goes against to just one little thing. NDC is just the environment, Ministry of Environment, but now that we're having to go into sectoral programs and the NAPs and all that stuff, you're leaving the Ministry of Ag on the side. So could this be a good opportunity to put them all together? Thank you.
Good. So that's a bunch of questions. I just add one because I'm having my usual rendezvous with the DG tomorrow. So what should I tell the DG about this conversation? Start with Clark, then Renata, then Annabelle, and then Fernando.
Great questions. Some of them are very hard to answer. Some of them are a bit easier. Eloisa? I mean, I think standard narratives are often standard for a reason. And I want to underscore, though, that the sort of standard narrative is really only one side of sort of, at least my perspective on the issue. And that is, yes, agriculture is a clear threat to these objectives through trade channels, but that there's a whole lot of other potential policy avenues to pursue that are on the sort of benefit side, right? And so I think my framing of the kind of standard narrative about cattle and soy in the Brazilian Amazon is really just a backdrop against which we need to consider these other sort of policy tools. And my discussion was really focused on trade. And so trade as a threat we need to be aware of it, and we need to be transparent about it when we talk about using trade channels to solve the problem as well. And so I don't think it's a matter of just the standard narrative. It's that we need to be aware of this when we're trying to use this channel to solve problems. And I guess to your point about the uniqueness of the Amazon, forgive me for being an economist, but the market, in order for this to be an economic solution, the market has to value it somehow. And I think that my kind of comments about certification premia and such are really speak to this. It's a marketing story. We need to convince consumers of the value and uniqueness of the Amazon, and they'll be willing to pay more to protect it. So, I mean, I think from a just kind of economics perspective, it's really about market valuation of this unique global resource. On the premia question, that's that on the surface was very, very concisely put. It's a very hard a hard question to answer, because in some sense, this is different certification schemes are certifying different environmental characteristics. And so we don't have kind of an omnibus understanding of what people are willing to pay for all of these individual characteristics. It's not quite like a menu that we get to pick from and say, okay, I want this product that I've purchased to be FSC certified, and I want it to be fair trade certified. And let's say it's coffee, I want it to be shade grown as well. So that's on the surface a very straightforward question, and how far away we are from sort of achieving sort of some threshold in which we have widespread adoption of these production practices. Also not clear. So there's some kind of idiosyncratic evidence on one certification scheme versus another, where people have sort of studied this, the sort of global consumer prices paid relative to producer farm gate prices. And I guess it's just a little too heterogeneous to give a straight answer on that.
Anata.
Should I start with your question? Maybe? No, or no? Right? So say the following to the DG. I think one key takeaway is I think we need to recognize in this house and in other forums, the multiple dimensions of sustainable development, as Eloisa also mentioned. I think this concept goes way beyond combating deforestation in the Amazon and other biomes. It includes fostering investment in financing practices in agriculture, livestock, bioeconomy, etc. So I think this is very important, that we recognize that there are, as Fernanda mentioned, many Amazons inside the Amazon, and so many different communities living in that space, so many different ways of and dimensions to talk about sustainable development in that region. So I think this is my message to her. Please take it to her. And just to comment, I think Geraldo mentioned about the communities. No, all the programs that we are working with, especially with the IDB, consider improving and giving the people that live there ways to survive and be economic viable. So we are not talking about deforestation only, but we are talking about changing activities, communities. So a lot of programs that I approve with sovereign guarantee, for example, from multilateral banks, they are considering the economic and the social dimensions of sustainable development, not only the environmental dimensions. And we have a list of programs going on in Brazil in that regard. And I think somebody asked about the Tropical Forest Forever facility. And the only number I can say is that we are hoping to mobilize up to $250 billion. And it's money not only for the Amazonian countries, but for 80 countries around the world with tropical forests. So, but this is still one draft proposal that is going to be presented at the next COP this year. And we're expecting to have an instrument implemented and a concrete instrument by next COP in Belém, Brazil next year. That's it.
Thanks, Annabelle.
So first I have to say I am delighted by the conversation because it's really been very fresh in this house. Fantastic new idea. So I have to say that. So very quickly, working with other stakeholders, yes, definitely. This is one of the pillars of Amazonia Forever, bringing all stakeholders around the table. This is a very complex issue, and we need everyone to be part of it. Second, on the point made by Geraldo, I just want to say that preservation can only work if it works for the people living there. So this is why a very important component of what we do is preservation going hand in hand with opportunities for people in the region. And the third point, Pascal, on your question, I want to compliment Renata to say that I have three observations. One, the dialogue on Amazonia is just starting in this house. To me, this is a beginning. Much more needs to be done. Two, it's a complex, multidimensional, Renata was saying dialogue, but it's also very relevant. And third is the WTO, that the DG yesterday, or the day before, just launched a WTO Secretariat strategy. And two of the main objectives of that strategy is for the WTO to become a knowledge hub and to strengthen its role as a dialogue platform. I believe this is a topic that could work very well for the WTO to look into this. And I want to, maybe you can put a challenge to the WTO, which is in the next COP30 in Belém, maybe the WTO can come up with a study as how can the WTO support the Amazon region.
Good. Some of them.
There's so many questions, I forgot them. Sorry. I remember a little bit. Vera, I don't remember your question. Okay, well, anyway, there was one which...
Never mind, there's no third round.
The drop. Well, yes, I see that people are adjusting, yeah, but it's not for the good. Everything is going to be much more expensive. There's one interesting thing about the Amazon, because we have a scarcity in the foods that we know, not the foods that come from the forest. There is, for instance, people create an acai coffee. So people are making coffee out of acai beans that we usually throw away. So they create, the Amazonians are very, very, very creative because they do not have available what we have. They don't have the supermarkets that we have here. So they have to come up with different products. And sometimes this is a product that became quite famous now. They call acai coffee. Just one interesting thing, what you said about premium products. We try to do this, but we cannot forget that we have two markets. We have the Brazilian market and we have the international market. The Brazilian market does not pay any premium, zero premium. That's why when we opened our company, I said the premium is only paid by international, and not everybody. So when we export our goods, and when I mean by 70 countries, every country has a different type of view to the Amazon. Some, for instance, Japan, Malaysia, China, they like the exoticity. So they buy because it comes from the Amazon. Wow, the Amazon, where is it? It's not Amazon.com. They stole the name. They stole the traffic in the internet, but it's not the real one. But this is one thing that helps. So you can sell a kilo of acai powder for 300 reais, which is a lot of money for us, yeah? But you cannot sell that to the US. They won't pay. But some people in the United States would pay because we are preserving or we are conserving the forests. So our strategy as a company that has a theme, which is basically bring forward Amazonian products, is that we have to understand our market. We have to understand our consumer. As ingredients provider, we understand also scale. I cannot create an acai coffee and say, okay, now I'm going to conquer all the world because, that product doesn't exist. We have to talk about food culture. I cannot take everything. Okay, aside from the commodities like cacao, I cannot treat cacao as an Amazonian product because it's not regulated by the Amazon specialty. It's regulated by market. So it doesn't work. Acai eventually would work. Kumaru, I don't know if you know kumaru. Kumaru is the tonka beans. Is something that is now becoming very, very familiar, very popular. Is used in the perfumery. It's a seed. It's a aromatic seed. The value of kumaru has tripled in the last 3 years. Why? Because it has become very, very, very famous in some places, but we don't have as many supply chains developed. Everybody's going to the same place. So we have to open new supply chains. I still go to places I've never been before, and then I ask them, especially the Brazil nut pickers, because it comes from the same area. Do you know Kumaru? I say, yeah, I know. We see them every time, is always falling. We don't take it because there's no market. Well, I tell you, there is a market. But I think one of the things that we really need to do is to create more supply chains, because the market is coming. The market is coming. But it's not only about a market problem now. It's a supply chain problem too. And
Good.
yeah, I think that's it.
Well, thank you very much. I think it's time to conclude. We've just slightly overshot. To thank the panel for first taking us to the magics of the Amazon, and there was a bit of that. So thanks for that. Giving us hope that maybe it can be done under some conditions. But we've had, I think, a reasonably positive discussion tonight, and that's great in this world. And third, I might suggest to Ngozi to try and adapt the old aid for trade platform of the WTO into an aid for sustainable trade platform.
Very good.
That's the idea I
Very
get
good.
for my meeting tomorrow.
Very good. Very good.
Thanks very much, and I think they deserve a bit of applause.